It's the 12th of July 2014, and trust me, it's just a number, guys. It's just a date, it's just a number. We never see the biological sand clock slowly pouring away. Otherwise, I dare say, if we could see that, we'd probably make the most of it. Some of the concerns I've been recently thinking about, first of all, that on the side of nature with what is taking place, and I think it's a grave concern to us all. We've got magnetic pole shift, we've got severe extreme weathers and climate change, and we're starting to hear more about Yellowstone. I'm not sure whether the focal point on Yellowstone is because it's a super volcano, but certainly if we just put that aside and we concern ourselves with what's taking place with all the other volcanoes, I think they can equally amount to a super volcano in the amount that is being put up in the atmosphere with those eruptions. The other concern I've got is the people that claim to be awake, and that's it. It's like, yes, I'm awake, and that's it, and that is a bit of a failure, to realise that you all classify yourself as being awake and not doing nothing about it, because it goes back to what I've discussed before with the ability to think logically and then the ability to act logically. The two must come together, in order for things to get any better than what they are. It's alright saying that you're awake, but if you're not prepared to do anything about the situation which you claim to know about, what is the point in the first part of being awake? It's simply, in my view, a matter of accepting what needs to be done, truthfully analysing something, coming to a conclusion on it, and then acting upon that information. To put it in simple terms, you're standing on track and there's a train coming. Now, logically thinking, you know what will happen if you stay on the track, so you avoid being hit by that train coming down the track. So you've taken a logical step to avoid that what you know to be currently taking place. And this is the problem, this is the concern I've got, is that people classify themselves as being awake but fail to act upon it. And it's a bit saddening, because with regards to what is being done with the world leaders across all the countries on this planet, I'm pretty sure that those that claim to be awake have the first part of logical reasoning and understanding what is taking place, but there is a lacking of action. And I can understand some of the fears that some of these people might have and the reasons not to want to act. They don't want to lose their job, they don't want to lose their entire life of life's worth of experiencing, because they don't want to be the ones that act alone, because they know it's a sacrifice of their life. But people do make sacrifices, and they do sacrifice their own life for the benefit of the majority of others. And we've only got to look back at the Second World War to see that was the case for a lot of people that lost their lives in that war, and it was for the freedoms of ourselves. And most wars are usually for the freedoms of others, and that requires people to sacrifice something, and in some cases it's the sacrifice of everything. If you just think for one moment about those brave men that was in the trenches in Germany fighting the First and Second World War, and they knew that as soon as the whistle had blown, they had to clamber up out the trench and run towards the enemy, knowing full well that the last two lots that did this are now laying there in the mud and the puddles and are dead. That has got to be, you know, recognised, that they knew they was going to die, you know, and they was doing it for the benefit of others. It was the freedoms of future generations for us in the UK. If it hadn't have been for their bravery, I dare say we'd probably be speaking German right now. But, you know, no one seems to be prepared to make any form of sacrifice. It doesn't have to be the ultimate sacrifice of their life. It could just be small sacrifices. It could be the sacrifices of, you know, parting with a few pounds to support an organisation that is prepared to do the work for you. Or it could be you participating in online, you know, forums and pressure groups, you know, and submitting your signature to, you know, a bill or some form of changing, you know, the way of life at the moment. And this is the problem. We've got a lot of people that claim to be awake but don't act at all. You know, even when they hear something being talked about that is right, they don't. You know, let's just take YouTube for instance. I've showed you the level of activity with people many times, and trust me, it's not just on my channel. If we look at other channels, let's take that channel the other day that, you know, I could not believe what people were focusing their attention on that you know, that channel that had got 28 million subscribers. If you just look at the level of activity with regards to thumbing up and thumbing down and writing a little bit of a, you know, a comment and applying it, you'll see that less than 1 million people had did that out of the 28 million that was subscribing to the channel. YouTube has an audience the size of a drop in the ocean compared to the population on this planet. You know, they do not have several billion participators on YouTube. So we're talking about a teardrop or a grain of sand on a beach. You know, and this is the problem, is that even if a few people are putting the right information out there and reporting it accurately, it just fails to get to the attention of everybody. And I'm sure this is part of the government strategy worldwide. And it's what seems to be another part of the strategy is the fragmenting of societies and the way in which they're mixing up cultures within those societies that have been pretty much dominant in the community for years and years. All of a sudden now find themselves with other cultures moving into theirs. Like you've got, well, you pretty much know you've got pretty much every ethnicity and diversity of people now, probably in your own Western country. It certainly is the case here. We've got Indians, Pakistanis, Muslims, you know, Kosovans. You know, it's a mixed, integrated culture, and that's a good thing. You know, that's not a bad thing. But what is a bad thing is what happens naturally when you do that. Is you segregate certain parties, and you'll probably know this if you live in one of those parts of cities where you have your mixed cultures. They stick together in their little groups, and they form fragmented communities. Now, could you imagine trying to get those communities to pull together and agree on one thing when there is so many different religions, beliefs, and common understandings on, you know, how to behave in life? Could you see the point there of you could see that there would be lots of different problems that would form, or barriers would develop, and it would be less likely for them all to come together on one common ground and fight for that, you know, common ground. And that's exactly what we've got taking place, and it's been, I believe, purposely designed that way, because they have, like I do see You see, I pick up on trends and I notice how many people participate in these channels, and it's easy to say, well, that is a representation of a wider number of people. And this is what your governments do with the data that they collect, only they're collecting it in a grander scale than what we are. I mean, they're listening to now phone calls, emails, and pretty much every form of communication, as well as human behaviours. Now, what I mean by that is your networking footprint is being recorded. If you go onto Google, Twitter, Facebook, eBay, YouTube, they're taking a thumbprint of your manoeuvring on the internet in a general, and that is being number crunched in programs so that they can manipulate that information is worth millions and millions of pounds to corporations. I don't know if you noticed, if you go into some shops, not just your general shopping shops, but something like if you went to a shop that's specified in cameras or golf clubs or fishing and things like that, and you wanted to buy certain pieces of equipment, they would ask you for your email address. And it's nothing short of building up databases so that they can sell the databases with relation to that product that you've brought. It's behaviour information that they're collecting. It's your behaviour that they're collecting it on. And it's all being used. With regards to the fracturing of societies, right, me saying that it's purposely done is because, you see, with people less likely to argue back to these authorities and governments, they're going to be able to get their way. And I say it's concerning because as the days go on from this point, the wine press, so to speak, will turn, and eventually there will be nothing left in the press. There'll be no juice left to crush out of it, and that is what's taking place, especially with the finances of everyone. If we just look what's took place over the last 10 years. Now, for the last 10 years or a decade, wages haven't increased, but inflation has. Most people know that 10 years ago, a loaf of bread in the UK was probably around 50 pence or less. Now it's over £1. A tin of stewed steak was about £1. It's now £2 something. And people have noticed the food, the utility bills, the fuel, and any other activity in between that, including leisure, has all exponentially increased. And this is what I was talking about in the previous video about what we discuss. There's a few of us that I talk about, and from a few different countries, and we see this happening. And this is an exponential curve. If you looked at the graph, it looked like a golf club. That's the level of increase in the way things are going, and it's called compounding. But the thing is it has to break, and it has come at this point closer than ever, and we're confident it can't continue on much longer than this. And they're going to start losing grips of these, these Western countries, and I'm sure they think they can keep kicking this can down the road with no effects to anyone. But the reality of it is it has come closer to that can being impossible to kick because of the weight that has been compounded on the can over the years in hyperinflating and going about the business in which they've done. I mean, I don't know how they've managed legally to get away with doing what they've done, but they have. I mean, we don't have the facilities to just print up money, because if we did, none of us would go to work tomorrow, but they have done that. And at the end of the day, they've did it with paper that has a promise on it, and it's failing to keep up with that promise, at least by 50% at the moment, even if not more, because of inflation has exceeded wages over the last 10 years. So basically what you've got is the same salary if you're lucky to have that, because what a lot of companies, at least in the UK, have done is they've made them take wage cuts to keep the job. So they've been double whammied, if you like, or they've had a 2-for-1 hit on them. Not only have they had to take a pay cut, they've had to deal with the rising cost of inflation, and it gets to a point where you can't do it no more. And this is the case now in the UK, and I don't mind telling anyone about it. There's nothing to be ashamed about it. They are finding themselves, people on low wages, having to still go to the food bank. And I think that's embarrassing, really, for this country, being as it's the 7th richest country in the world, if not, I believe, more closer to the, one of the countries that are the richest. That's if that's to be reported correctly, but that's the case for a lot of people. Now, think about that, guys. If you go to work and you work hard, you can have an opportunity to further yourself or have a little bit more. But these people are working hard, and in some cases 2 members of the family are working hard, and they can't afford to simply buy food at the end of the week, so that they've got to go down to the food banks and get some food. I think that's a shame. I do. But unless you analyse this logically and you look at the spectrum of what's going on in the full range, and you make a decision that this isn't going to get any better for you, and you don't start to stick together on these subjects, you're never going to rectify them. And again, I hate to keep quoting this quote, that if every organism in your body went out for itself, the body would wither away within a week. And that's a quote from Jack Fresco. But basically, it is the same for things on grander scales, and it certainly is the same for countries that have smaller communities within them. If you cut off the supply to the smaller communities or the more impoverished communities, they will certainly wither away. But what you'll be doing inevitably is cutting off one of those organs that keep the body alive or keep the country alive, and it'll be at your own peril for not acting. It is coming to a head, guys, and it's very difficult, because again, like on the scales of nature, the scales that the economies work on, and the artificial manipulation that they're doing, is the only way they can keep them going now. It's only it only prolongs the life of an economy by stimulating it in the way that you have to. It's like leaving the the breathing apparatus that keeps somebody alive in a coma going, because that's what's happened. The economy's in a coma, and they're having to do the breathing for the economy. They're having to pump the blood round for the economy artificially in order to keep it going. But what's happening here with the economy, with this analogy, is the different organisms are starting to fail, and they're having to do more to keep them going. And it will exceed a point very soon. Could be 6 months, could be 12 months, I don't know. It's going to exceed a point where it's going to become unsustainable, even by artificially stimulating the economy to do so. These are some of the things we talk about. The other things we talk about is on the natural scale, with nature and things like that. And I've mentioned a few times, I think what we do put out as a whole does reflect what takes place, and I can't see that being far wrong, because we are, after all, a part of this universe. And I know we live in a dome, a biosphere on a planet, and it's hard to see the connection because there's no physical strings attached to the outward stars, but maybe spiritually there is. And I do think it's more than a coincidence that at least from 2007, when this recession really started to take hold, that at the same time we started to see even more extreme weather and climate changes. And I think the two go hand in hand, and why shouldn't they? You know, we are, after all, part of this universe and part of the mechanisms of this planet. So, you know, I do believe what we put out, you know, does come back to us. Only we don't see the physical connections between the two. So I'll leave it here, guys. You know, I've rackled on a bit. You know, I hope you see the point. You know, what I'm saying here is, and the purpose of doing this video is just to bring you awareness of, yes, you may classify yourself as being awake, but unless you are prepared to act, you may as well not have been awake in the first place, because it's childish to know something or to know about things that are wrongs and to allow them to continue. I hope you get where I'm going with this. You know, it's a logical choice that has to be made. You know, thinking logic is one part, is a good thing, but acting logic is really, once you understand the problem, acting logic is the thing you need to do. And that's where a lot of people are at the moment. I see that they're awake, I know they understand all these problems, but they've got to start participating in actions at some point. If it's not done now, you know, there is, I think, on the horizon, again, as I've discussed with a few others, some serious possibilities which humans are going to cause directly to humans, and that's a bad thing. You know, at the moment there is, and I'm pretty sure that you're aware of this, an agenda out there to further enslave the rest of this world. You know, these are people that don't think logically, and they don't understand what damage they're doing by waxing themselves rich, keeping all the enjoyments that this world has to offer for themselves. And even, you know, guys, the land registry in the UK have come out with it in shock, and they've said never before has so few people owned so much. It's like this austerity measures that has been imposed on us was a green light for a few people to exploit the situation. Could it have been even brought upon us purposely for that stealing of wealth to take place? I don't know. I'll leave you with those thoughts, guys. You know, I'd like your comments on this as well. You know, put the comments in the box down below. I always include a link if you want to support the channel. You know, we do other things on this channel other than talk about sub-subjects like this. You know, we cover the pole shift, and we're still doing the you know, the 0 point free energy trials. We build a lot of equipment on and things like that. We look into a lot of the possibilities of people's claims with their ideas. We build them, so you know, it all costs money, and of course it's time as well. So if you want to put a contribution in towards this work, you know, the link's down there, guys. And I won't keep any more of you any longer than what I have. I'll say what I usually do. Be safe, make some preparations, and as always, guys, I'll say bye for now.